Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. We're going to give folks a few minutes to finish getting in on the Zoom before we get started. I see a lot of people joining. We'll start in 2 or 3 minutes once everyone's had a chance to get on. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our webinar today on simplifying systematic literature reviews. And specifically, we're going to be talking about overcoming regulatory challenges with automation and GenAI. A few housekeeping notes before we start this morning. First, we are recording this session and we will share the recording at the end. We'll take questions at the end of the webinar. You'll have a chance to type in your questions, and there'll be several interactive polls as we go through the webinar. We want this to be interactive, and we want to hear what you're experiencing in your work with systematic literature reviews. So with that, welcome, and we'll go ahead and get started. A little bit about Celligence. I'm Erin Cosgrove. I'm the Vice President of Business Development for Medical Devices at Celligence. We're a regulatory consulting company headquartered in Chicago. And we've been working with systematic literature reviews really since MDR started. So we have a lot of experience doing this firsthand for our clients. And we've experienced a lot of the inefficiencies and the challenges when we first started doing these manually. Because of that, we built out software that now incorporates quite a bit of automation, and we've built in generative AI to help support doing the systematic literature reviews and make them more efficient. And we're going to share a little bit today about both what you can do with technology and also what you want to be thinking about strategically as you're working through your literature review with your notified body. We're a full service consulting firm, so we handle regulatory consulting, submissions, publishing and compliance, regulatory writing, medical writing. The focus in the webinar today will all be around that systematic literature review and how technology can help there. And I'm very pleased to introduce our two subject matter experts. Both of our speakers today have written, worked with clients, and helped clients successfully use these systematic literature reviews, either standalone or as part of a CER, for literally hundreds of these. And they'll be sharing their expertise with you today. First is Parvarthi Nambiar. Parvarthi is our Associate Manager of Medical Device Services. She has a master's degree in microbiology and has been working on these for the last 7 years, so really since the early days of MDR. And Parvarthi has deep expertise in clinical evaluation documentation, post-market documents, clinical investigation plans, clinical study reports, and is one of our subject matter experts here at Celligence. And then our second panelist is Dr. Kasturi Rao. She's also an associate manager with the medical device services here at Celligence. Kasturi has her PhD degree in cancer research and a master's degree in molecular biology and human genetics. She's has over 12 years of experience in the life sciences industry, including the last 4 years doing regulatory writing specifically for medical devices. And she also has deep expertise writing systematic literature reviews and documents such as the clinical evaluation plans, clinical evaluation reports, the PMS documentation, the post-market follow-up documentation. So I'm excited to have both of these fabulous speakers here today, and I think you will learn a lot as they share their expertise in our webinar on systematic literature reviews.
All right. Thank you, Erin, for that introduction. So let's get started. So the learning objectives for today's webinar are understanding the role of systematic literature reviews in regulatory submissions, to learn how the review process should be structured, to understand how to plan and execute this review, to explore how technology can be leveraged in this process. We will also take you through some of the common observations seen from notified bodies. And we'll, of course, address any questions you have towards the end of the presentation. So let us begin. When we look at the life cycle of a medical device, data from literature can be useful, a useful source in the preliminary research and in the design and development phase. When the device is in the post-market stage, literature reviews is a key process and is to be followed to monitor the safety and performance of the device. Also, SLRs are needed to show compliance to EU MDR and IVDR. For example, the MDR clearly states that the manufacturer shall identify available clinical data relevant to the device and its intended purpose, and also identify any gaps in the clinical evidence through a systematic literature review. It also states that the requirement to appraise all relevant data by evaluating their suitability for establishing the safety and performance of the device. As mentioned earlier, it is an essential component of the PMS system to basically show that the manufacturer is re-verifying, revalidating the outcomes with real-world data, and to also improve the safety and performance of the device. Before we go further, we would like to understand your views, particularly relating to the challenges faced while drafting a report to the SLR. Kelly, can we please start the poll? So the question is, what is the most challenging aspect for you in effectively drafting an SLR report for your device? Is it ensuring comprehensive data collection and tracking throughout the device lifecycle? Is it identifying and assessing potential risks associated with the device? Is it facilitating timely reporting and analysis of adverse events? Or the fact that your device is not being called out in literature articles?
It's interesting to see the responses that are coming in the poll. And let's see how, which of these answers get the majority of the votes.
Yeah, we'll definitely discuss some of the challenges faced in our upcoming slides.
We can wait for a few more seconds and then close the poll. Yep. So we see that the majority of the votes has been for ensuring comprehensive data collection and tracking throughout the device lifecycle, followed by the device not being called out in literature articles, which is a common challenge that we all face. And identifying and assessing potential risks associated with the device is the third most common answer. And finally, facilitating timely reporting and analysis of adverse events.
Okay, so let us discuss this a little bit more in detail. Okay, so some of the common challenges faced in the SLR process is the regulatory scrutiny. So the reviewers would like to see that the data represented should be structured, traceable, and reproducible. Another big challenge is the data volume. So having to create multiple search strings across various databases can create large volume of data, which is then required to be screened, organized, and archived. Next, the problem is the evolving evidence. The data gathered can reveal off-label use, new risks, and new clinical outcomes, and tracking all of this can be difficult. All of these challenges can also lead to bias and reproducibility issues. Considering the volume of the data and the frequency of the updates, there can be challenges if you don't have a systematic approach and if the person conducting the review is not trained as per your established SOPs. So going back again from your poll results, there is also the challenges that you commonly face where you mentioned just gathering the data is a challenge, and we will talk about how to address this concern in the upcoming slides. Okay, so where do we begin? First of all, you need to define your objective for the SLR. Are you doing it to gather safety and performance for your device? Or do you need the data to establish state of the art by looking at outcomes from competitors and alternative treatments? You will need to have a clear understanding of what your intention is for the SLR. While you are setting your objectives, you must keep in mind the claims for your device, the intended use, the indications, and you might also want to consider monitoring any known risks and their occurrence rates from previous evaluations. You should also make sure your process is aligned to the established SOPs. Next, you will have to consider what databases to include and what date range to consider. This is, of course, conditional and would depend if your SLR is for a regulatory report versus regular market monitoring. You should also consider what adverse events databases and clinical trial registries to include. This would, of course, depend on where your device is marketed. Technology can also be leveraged for this process, and if so, it should be clearly defined in your strategy. Your screening and appraisal strategies should also be clearly outlined, and Parvati will talk about this in the upcoming slides. Next will be the data analysis and the reporting. You must consider methodological analysis and discussion of the safety and performance outcomes of your device based on your established protocols. The search strategy and the objectives need to be clearly mentioned, and it is essential to call out any deviations from your plan in your report. Clearly conclude the analysis and call out any data gaps, and these need to also be linked to your other integral documentation like your risk files, your IFUs, design changes, etc. The appendices and the reference pack should also be made available with all the relevant information. And of course, it always helps to have a standardizing reporting format. So what should the structure of the report look like? It should clearly mention the background, the scope, and should include the device name, product codes, applicable regulations, the classification, manufacturer details, and all of this should align with what is mentioned in your CEP, your CER, and other source documents. Next, the claims, benefits, and any risks associated with the device should be mentioned. Also to be included is the objective for the literature search with any previous literature review details. As mentioned earlier, the screening, analysis, and conclusion appendices should all be clearly identifiable in the report. Parvati, would you like to go over the further details?
Sure, yeah. Thanks, Kasturi. So as Kasturi has been summarizing about the essential data that goes into an SLR, I want to focus on where can you collect this data from. So the data mainly consists of or can be extracted from databases and registries that collect the safety and performance outcomes of any device. So this could include clinical trial registries and also adverse event or vigilance databases. So the databases that have been listed on the slide is not an exhaustive list. Additional databases can be applicable as per the marketed region of the device. There are certain literature databases that can be used to retrieve published clinical evidence for your device. And the aim is to structure the queries appropriately to the subject or the equivalent device or the benchmark or the similar device that's been focused upon, along with the clinical condition of interest. So to summarize the literature process flow, you should have a clear search strategy in mind, and you should design your search strings to be sensitive and precise with the use of keywords and Boolean operators. This will ensure that you can obtain relevant studies, which can then be analyzed based on the L1 and L2 screening strategies that have been defined. So the data should then be analyzed for specific measurable endpoints, and an acceptance criteria should be formed from the benchmark devices or from guidelines. Finally, the data should be analyzed and represented effectively and consistently in all the required PMS documents. So this process works more efficiently when there is sufficient clinical data for the medical device. However, as in the poll question also, some of you, or at least the second majority of the people, have said that there were scenarios where there is minimal evidence for device safety and performance. So there could be instances where the device has no safety or performance data, or the device has multiple indications, but the required data is not presented for all from the clinical evidence that is generated. In such instances, the manufacturer can opt for PMCF activities to gather the required data. So now let's look over at the systematic literature process to gain a better understanding. Firstly, a robust systematic literature review process involves the selection of the right databases and the key terms pertaining to the device, the medical or clinical condition of interest, the equivalent device, the competitor devices identified, the alternative technology or treatment options that is used for the same indicated purpose, and any relevant guidelines for the same clinical condition. The search strategy should be derived based on relevant frameworks such as PECO, PEO, which stands for Population Exposure or Outcome, Eclipse, which is used in the healthcare policy, etc., to develop research questions, which stands for Expectation, Client Group, Location, Impact, Professionals, and Service, or SPIDER, which stands for Sample, Phenomenon of Interest, Design, Evaluation, Research Type, which is used to develop research questions for SLRs. The inclusion and exclusion criteria are established based on the type of the device and the risk classification to obtain the most relevant and correct data. PRISMA protocol is to be followed, and I will talk about this in the next slide. The aim of the review should be to obtain relevant data on the safety and performance endpoints. This can be obtained from literature published on the similar or benchmark devices, and these will be used to establish the acceptance criteria for this evaluation. So the established guidance can also, or guidelines can also help with identifying pertinent endpoints and quantitative parameters to form the acceptance criteria. The outcomes from the same endpoints from your subject device or your equivalent devices should then be compared to the established acceptance criteria. So once all of the data is assessed and analyzed, the acceptability of the safety and performance of the subject device should be discussed in the report, and any gaps should be specifically called out. Also, all identified risks from the review should be mapped and compared against the risk files, and the benefit risk analysis should be part of the final discussion. So as I explained in the previous slide, PECO is the most commonly used framework for literature analysis. So PECO stands for patient or problem, intervention, control or comparison, and outcome. The aim is to develop your search strategy considering these 4 parameters, and the keywords should be pertaining to these 4 parameters as well, and should be defined properly in your systematic literature protocol and your report as well. The flowchart presented in the slide describes the SLR process. In brief, PRISMA is made up of 4 steps, starting with searching the records for and identification of duplicates, proceeding through the abstract level screening, following which we will do a full text screening, And then the finally included studies and reports are analyzed and presented in the report. So the L2 appraisal of articles or the full text screening should be performed as described in the IMDRF MDCE WG/N56 document. All articles that are appraised in L1 screening should be evaluated for suitability and data contribution criteria. The weightings would be used to assess the dataset's contribution to demonstrating the overall safety, clinical performance, and/or the effectiveness of the medical device. So as a general guide in using this example, the more level 1 grades, the greater the weight of the evidence provided by that particular data set in comparison to the other data sets. However, it is not to be intended to, the relative weightings from each category should not be added to consider it as a total score. So this is the principle that we follow for L2 appraisal of the articles. So now that we've gone through the process, I would like to describe at Selligence how we perform this process. So at Selligence, the authors perform the entire process of systematic literature review using our proprietary cloud-based software named Captus. So Captus helps the author stay consistent. It helps them avoid errors experienced in the manual process as we use Excel and there's a lot of repetition and duplication of information. And it also helps us stay compliant to the quality process and procedures. Captus also has these nifty features that help users save considerable amount of time, and it has brought in more efficiency, accuracy, reduced the burden on the SMEs, and really minimized non-conformances in our documents. I will detail about Captus in the slides further in our presentation. So now, once you have all your data shortlisted, as discussed in the previous slides, it is critical to capture and present the most relevant data. So when it comes to selecting the safety and performance parameters, it is crucial requirement to select the endpoints that are measurable and also substantiate your device's claims and benefits. For example, if your device is a dental device, the performance benefit would be effective space closure, and the endpoint would be the measurement of the tooth movement in millimeters. Similarly, if the safety benefit is the reduction of gum disease, the endpoint would be the measurement of the rate of gum disease reported after the treatment. So now if you're considering large data sets, normalizing the data and representing the outcomes as a weighted average should be considered after segregating the data sets as per the medical condition. So the data presented from these endpoints should provide evidence for all the device indications and the device variance combinations if applicable. Comparing the same endpoints with data from the benchmark devices or the similar or competitor devices will ascertain if your device is on par with the competitor devices available on the market or if it is state-of-the-art offering. The safety data obtained from the data sources used should be analyzed for any new risks and to evaluate if there is any change to the benefit risk profile of the device. It is essential that the analysis performed should be represented clearly and consistently, along with justifying any outliers or mitigation plans if applicable. So now we would like to share some of the common observations that we have seen from notified body reviews with respect to presentation of SLR data in the clinical evaluation documentation. Kasturi, I would like to ask you, like, based on your experience, what kind of observations have you come across in SLR process or clinical evaluation documentation?
Yeah, thanks, Parvati. So a frequent observation that we've seen is that there is no evidence submitted of a detailed literature search protocol. And as explained earlier, it is really necessary to document your strategy that you have used for analyzing the literature data and to show that there is a systematic approach. It is very important that you have the inclusion and exclusion criteria and your appraisal strategy clearly defined. To add on to this further, we have seen notified body observations where they have called out non-English articles are being excluded. So if your device is marketed in the EU, there is a good possibility that there are literature articles, including published in local languages. So these have to be translated and included. Also, clearly mention the strategy used to avoid duplication of data. So for example, if you have a clinical study and is included both as an individual study and as part of a meta-analysis data or analysis, ensure that only one data set is included in your analysis. Your search terms also should be designed in such a way that it can extract relevant data according to the intended population, the intended medical indications, the comparators, and the outcomes of your device. You should also describe how the search protocol is designed to be sensitive and precise. Parvati, would you like to talk a little bit more about some of the other observations?
Yeah, definitely. So whatever you've summarized, definitely we've also come across those. And additionally, the other inconsistencies or errors that we've come across is inconsistencies between the Prisma flow diagram and the literature appendices. So always we should ensure that the number of articles that are presented across the document in both the Prisma flow diagram and the appendices needs to be consistent across the same document and across all the other documents where the data is being presented. Another example would be that the provided data should consider all relevant data on equivalent device if the equivalent strategy is implemented, and also consider adverse event data on the similar or benchmark devices that have been identified. So a complete assessment needs to be presented in your reports so that a thorough assessment is taken up and the safety and performance parameters can be evaluated accordingly. And measurable and quantifiable safety and performance endpoints is necessary, as we've discussed in the previous slides. This is to evaluate and demonstrate that the subject device's safety and performance parameters are up to the mark and to ensure that there is no change in the device's benefit risk analysis. So yeah, these are some common pitfalls that we've observed. And yeah, we have another poll here, and we would like to know our audience's thoughts to further this discussion. So Kelly, can you please launch the poll? The question is, do you use technology to assist you with your SLR documentation requirements? Say yes if you have, say no if you have not. And if you are willing to utilize it based on this discussion, you can choose option C. And yeah, while we wait for the results, Kasturi, what are your thoughts on using technology for the SLR process?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I can definitely vouch for how technology has helped, my team. In clinical submissions, there are a lot of standard and repetitive processes. So in such instances, we can definitely integrate technology to our processes to reduce the manual efforts. So yeah, I would definitely vouch for that and would like to talk a little bit more about this in the next few slides.
Absolutely, yeah. So from what the results, it's not complete, but what I see is we have an equal number of yes and no, almost. Yes. So people have used and have not used. And it's basically the same throughout. So everybody is, people have used, people have not used, and people are willing to use technology as well. So this is good to know because whatever we want to share in the next few slides would be quite interesting and quite good importance to all the audience members.
Yep. Okay, so before considering the advantages of using technology, let us look at some of the challenges one faces when you use the manual approach for your SLR documentation. So as you're already aware, the manual process will require a lot of time. And depending on the team, there can be multiple versions of the same document. So this can, then of course lead to traceability and accuracy issues, and can, impact effective collaborations, reviewing, and finalizing the documents. So how can technology help here? So using platforms like Captis can definitely help in receiving notifications, based on your submission deadlines. So this can ensure that you can start working on your reports in a time-effective manner. You can also set up document update alerts so that you will be made aware of the latest version of all your source documents, and you can ensure that the correct versions are being referenced in your reports. And once the project is set up on the platform with all the required search strings, you can run your searches with preset date ranges. Also, the platform can be used as a repository for all your documents, and it can be used to highlight any discrepancies, which will then help to ensure all your documents are aligned. So I have seen firsthand in my team how technology has improved our processes and how it has really simplified the steps. We collaborate more effectively as it eliminates communication gaps within the team involved. Using technology such as Captus allows you to have all your required documents in one place, which can be organized based on your requirements. With the help of automation, we also have seen data being extracted and represented in a time-efficient manner. For example, the software automatically excludes duplicate articles during the literature search, or having all the abbreviations and the references listed instantly. So getting notifications for a new version of the document for any required maintenance updates also makes sure that you address any regulatory requirements in a stress-free and timely fashion. So having all the data in one place also ensures transparency. Finally, having set reporting formats and organized data can ensure that the data is represented uniformly across all the regulatory documents, and therefore can help facilitate a seamless completion and submission process. So how can drafting and reviewing documents on Captus help with your process? First, there is the use of the pre-built template structure as per your requirements. So this is a customizable feature and will ensure all your reports will have the same template. You will also not have to worry about formatting. Once you export the finalized documents to Word, all your content, tables, and figures are all uniformly formatted based on a customizable style template. Since all your documents, literature screening, adverse events are all in one place, the content becomes traceable. And Captus also has a data dictionary function where we can enter commonly used content like device name, manufacturer details, SOPs, etc. And this can be used across any document that's being drafted for the same medical device. It also helps in reference management as it allows to cite and create a big bibliography of the articles included after your L2 screening, and also will provide you with a reference pack with all the PDF files of the articles referenced, all numbered in the same order as referenced in the report. It also acts as a centralized system for all your projects and can be used to archive all the information in one place. The positive impact on the team and the project is definitely seen in terms of increased efficiency, fewer errors, effective collaboration, traceability, as well as audit compliance.
Okay, so Kasturi has covered how we used Captus to draft our documents and how it's resulted in time saving and all the beneficial aspects. So what I would like to cover in the slide is how Selligence does literature reviews and how we do it better and faster. So as previously discussed, we use our proprietary cloud-based platform Captus, which has a literature module wherein we can perform the L1 screening and L2 appraisal as per the process that's been defined based on the manufacturer's specifications. And once this process has been conducted or performed, there's always the possibility of having a bulk import of search data, and we can automatically import the full texts, which are available for free. We also have automated AI data summaries, which improve the consistency across the documentation. So we have Captus Copilot, which is our GenAI based technology that can help summarize the literature summaries that have been appraised in L2 level. And this has been used across by many of our own projects, and we've obviously observed improved consistency across the documentation. And there's always reduced rework for maintenance reports, as all the documents have been maintained on this platform. There is audit trails that can be maintained, and we've seen a 30% efficiency gain. So using Captus, we've been able to do quicker literature reviews. There's traceable evidence gathering, and there is a simplified process of notified body reviews that we can work through. So now, since we are performing the systematic literature process on Captus, we know that updating tables manually every time new data is added, it can be tedious and quite error-prone. And Captus has this feature of having dynamic tables. So the moment you update your literature review or any other data sources, the tables automatically refresh in real time. So this guarantees that your documents always reflect the latest information, enhancing both the accuracy and efficiency. And as discussed previously, this is regarding Captus AI. So we have this feature wherein we can message Captus AI, and the AI can be used as an assistant to speed up the data extraction and summarization process. So the writer has full control over what is collected and saved for the article. As shown on the slide, a prompt can be put into the platform, and if you click on generate suggestions, Captus AI can generate the suggestions based on the prompt that has been devised. So in this case, we are looking at the aim. And since the writer has full control, they can either accept the Copilot suggestion or they can disregard it. So this helps in streamlining the data refining process. So now we have an example of how AI can help you build your strategy. So this case study presents an example wherein a new author who is unfamiliar with the therapeutic area or the device indicators uses the AI prompt to come up with 3 possible performance indicators. Now, this is a non-exhaustive list of indicators that AI provided us. These can be further researched to obtain data on how they can be quantified and measured. So this process gives the writer more clarity on what the indicators can be looked for in literature, such as overbite, underbite, etc. And this serves as a foundation to the clinical evidence collection and analysis process. And similarly, we've done the same for safety indicators, wherein prompts were provided to the AI and it came up with safety indicators for the same device. And in this example, soft tissue irritation can have measurable endpoints, which can be assessed using data on sores or ulcers that can be caused by the device. Thus, AI can be helpful in inducting and training team members who are new to the clinical evaluation process, its objectives, and the device's therapeutic areas. So this initial guidance that AI provides can help reduce the burden on your subject matter experts, allowing them to focus more on the clinical data rather than the data description in the documentation.
Yes. So as discussed earlier, AI can definitely support in the decision-making process while finalizing the strategy. It also helps to screen the articles and automatically exclude duplicates. AI can also be used to extract relevant data from the finalized articles, and these can be added to your pre-formed summary tables. You can also use the Copilot feature to help draft your general SOTA content or even your discussions and your conclusions. However, it's essential to keep the human factor also involved to ensure that the data is accurately represented, ultimately leading to a high quality document. Next slide, please. Okay, so to sum up the key takeaways of this webinar, you first have to implement a clear strategy, define your objectives, and have a systematic approach. Ensure you have a detailed protocol which describes how you will include and appraise your data. Identify measurable safety and performance endpoints for your device and compare the outcomes to your benchmark devices. Use this data to then improve the usability of your device and update any relevant documents if required. Use technology to make this whole process more comprehensive and productive. And following these steps can definitely help minimize the risks of receiving process-related notified body comments. So thank you for your time, and we'll be happy to answer any questions now.
All right, and we have a very engaged audience today. There's been questions coming in as you've both been presenting, so we can jump right in. And for those of you who haven't put your questions in yet, please feel free to just type them in the chat, and we'll try to get to everything while we're here live. So first question, what is the best way to handle gray and unpublished literature when it comes to a systematic literature review?
I can take this up, Erin. So yes, I mean, when it comes to literature, obviously, data from peer-reviewed journals is definitely considered as the most high-quality evidence, clinical evidence for your device. However, in instances where you have limited information, then it is recommended that you include any other type of literature, say conference abstracts or etc. Right? So that you still have some evidence for your device, and it can be included in such instances.
Thank you. Another question, in cases where there is no literature data, is the PMCF enough? They've gone right to the hard ones today.
Yeah, so I can try to take this one. So yes, this would be the first line of approach that we would do if there's insufficient clinical evidence from literature. So what we try to do is we try to customize a PMCF strategy wherein some kind of clinical data can be generated. So definitely the general strategy of collecting literature evidence will not be sufficient. So we've also come up with surveys or either HCP surveys or patient surveys or any kind of clinical trials. These have also been relied upon to generate any kind of clinical evidence. So these could be strategies that can be followed for PMCF, and these are generally accepted, provided that whatever clinical information that is required for your device has been collected by this process.
Thanks, Parvarthi.
To add on to that, Erin, so if you don't have data from your literature and you are doing a PMCF study or a survey, then the survey should be designed in such a way that you collect all the evidence for your indications and your intended population. So that will be critical because that is how they will assess whether you have evidence for all your intended use and for the indications of your device.
Thanks for adding that. That's a really important point.
Yeah.
Right. Another question. You mentioned similar devices for the literature search. Outside of allowing to identify performance and safety criteria in the state of the art and use it to do the benefit risk ratio, how shall we use it in the PSER and PMCF report? And then there's a follow-up note that says currently the data presented in these documents only concerns the evaluated device. So I assume that they have the evaluated device, but maybe not the state of the art review information.
Okay, so definitely in the PSER, we would not be presenting data from the similar devices or competitor devices, because in the PSAR, we generally present data related to the sales and complaints data, which is proprietary information, which is we won't have access to it definitely until and unless there's a contract established. That's a whole other thing. So in the PSAR, we only rely on the literature evidence again, just to show that the risk-benefit analysis is the risk-benefit ratio or the analysis has been performed and the device is still state-of-the-art. The same analysis that's been performed in the SLR or the CR is the same that is presented in the PSAR. In the PMCF report also, more or less, it's the same standards that are, or the same data that's been presented. Under the general evaluation strategies, we do present literature-specific data, and we consider this for both or for all of the devices, which would be the subject device, the equivalent device if it's been considered, your benchmark or similar or competitor devices. All of these have all the data that needs to be presented regarding literature and adverse events from vigilance databases and any other kind of data that's available on the public forum. I hope that answers the question.
The next one is around, looks like some questions around how far the technology can go with the review. So can AI tools replace the human review, analysis, and data extraction?
Definitely not. Not at the moment. We've discussed this previously as well. So that is why we are saying AI is used as an assistant. It's used as along with human in the loop interaction. So you have to, like a human is required, or a research professional or an experienced professional is required to come up with the search strategy for the devices, because AI will not be able to come up with it unless you come up with the prompts yourself. So that is why a human is required in the entire process, along with the AI can summarize the data, but we require a human to verify this data if it's pertaining to the information that we require, or if we require more data, if there is incorrect data that's been analyzed. So all of this requires a human in the loop who needs to take these analytical decisions. Kasturi, if you want to add any further points.
Yeah, definitely. Using AI definitely helps. It will help you create a strategy. If you're facing writer's block, it can definitely help you, structure your report. But when it comes to specific analytical data, yes, it can help you identify that information in, a clinical article, but you will really have to verify this data if in fact it has captured the right data for based on your objectives. Is it capturing the right endpoints? Is it capturing the right results? And you will have to interpret the data based on your objectives for your evaluation.
Is there a concern about whether articles uploaded are allowed to be processed by AI?
This is a great question. So I know that there is right now regulations being put into place on how AI can come into picture in regulatory documentation. We are not, like I said, we still have the human in the loop, where how we are using the process currently is to just help in our process to be more efficient. So we are not manipulating the data, we are not changing the data, we are just trying to get the results that are already present in the article, in a more, to be presented in a more efficient manner. So that is where I feel it is still acceptable, where we can still use AI for the literature articles. I hope that answers the question.
Right, and then we've got a very specific one around dental products. I work with dental products. Can a dentist use this, or would we need a researcher?
I think we would require more data as to what the question entails. Like, are they writing the CR? Is the question around performing systematic literature reviews as a dentist, or do you want a researcher to perform the systematic literature review?
And to clarify, certainly you could use it for dental products, but you just need some clarity. So if
Yep.
that person's still on, if you want to just type a little bit more detail, we can address that. Oh, they just put a note in. Yes, dentist writing the CER.
Definitely. So we do have dentists who are medical writers, so they do use the platform, they do use the process. So yeah, you would be able to do that. Only thing that you would want to be aware of is the guidelines that are used. So you need to be aware of MDR, you need to be aware of IMDRF guidelines so that you follow the same process. But yeah, definitely.
All right, this one, I have an analytical question pertaining to your Captus tool. How can Captus support when a full text article is not a searchable type? Meaning that the text cannot be copied from the full text or the search cannot be done with the literature. In this case, how will Captus pull the required data?
That's an excellent question. So right now what we do have is articles that are in can be read and is in a PDF format or a Word format, or that can select text. So that's how it's integrated. As of now, if it is an image or you can't select the text, then I am not sure at this point the platform can analyze this data. So you will, once we know that, however, you will be able to identify such articles, right? So if you give a prompt and you're not getting any results, then you know there's something to do with the type of article that's uploaded. So those are the ones that you will have to manually summarize.
Yeah, and Kasturi, is it fair to say those are typically very old articles because most of what we see today is in a PDF that can be analyzed?
Yeah, the rates are minimal. Yeah.
Another question, what is your point of view regarding CER under 6110 devices without any clinical claim? Does the regulatory approach, these should be justified by the literature? And then what do you cover as outcome measures for a device without clinical claims?
This is a very good question. And what we generally tend to do for such devices without a clinical claim is to look for other devices that are used in conjunction with these devices so that you can rely on clinical evidence from such devices. So generally, devices without a clinical claim would encompass certain accessories or devices that are used in certain procedures which do not have the exact it does not directly impact the patient. However, it is required in the entire process. So what we have done is we've come up with surrogate endpoints wherein we've relied on the clinical benefit offered by the main device. And we've mentioned that since their subject device is used along with this particular device, it also has this clinical benefit to the patient because all of these devices have to be used in conjunction. So we've relied on surrogate endpoints and we've relied on evidence generated from the main device to substantiate the safety and performance data for this particular medical device, which do not have any clinical claim.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Kasturi.
Yeah, to add to that, if, again, going back to your intended use and the indications, so if you can have endpoints to measure the performance of the device, it may not be clinical, but if you can show that the device performs as intended through measurable endpoints, then that would be sufficient. Yeah.
Okay. Another technical question, will Captus help in identifying predetermined endpoints from multiple articles?
So at the moment, we have to, so basically what you need to do is you need to create the prompt, which should help capture all this required data. So your prompt is the one that captures the relevant data from the articles. At the moment, we do it individually from one article to another. However, I'm sure that for multiple articles also this feature can be implemented. But yeah, it all depends on your prompt, on the way that you present your prompt so that AI can read the prompt and generate the data accordingly from these articles.
Yeah, to add further, Erin, we will have to, like I mentioned, have your endpoints defined or your outcomes defined at the beginning itself. So if your prompts are consistent and you have the same prompts for all the papers, then you will get the data automatically. If you are not getting any outputs from this article, you will have to just check it manually to see if there's any other relevant endpoints you can consider for your discussion.
Okay, great summary. Do you have a measure of effectiveness of your AI tool in summarizing literature versus additional correction by the human reviewer / writer?
We are in the process of performing a testing for this. So we don't have the data yet, but yes, we do perform user acceptability testing before we release this feature or before we start using this feature. So yeah, to answer your question, yes, we do have a measure or we do testing for effectiveness. Yes.
Let's see another, and I would it be fair to add to that you get a very good first cut. I know you're still working through the numbers, but you get a very good first cut at data extraction, and then you really want that medical expertise, that human review going through it.
Yes. So as we've discussed in the examples, so we've used AI very successfully to generate data for people who are not aware of the therapeutic area or people who are very new to the process. So it can serve as a very good first step as an initiation into the therapeutic area, into the, I don't know, the indication of the device. And then the writer can research on that and build. So it gives you a starting point. So definitely helpful. And yeah, the summaries also, we don't have much of an issue at the moment. So yeah, I think I'll stop at that.
All right. And then let's see, this may have to be the last question because I think we're getting close to on time. What's your opinion regarding literature reviews for combination products? Do they require a similar strict approach? Hester, I see your head nodding.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. It will require a similar approach. You need to show how the device can be used in combinations. You need to have clinical evidence for every combination possible. If you don't have evidence for any particular combination used, then you will have to call this out once your evaluation is completed and plan different strategies to gather this data. And this could be a PMCF survey, a study, an investigation. That's up to the manufacturer. But yes, a systematic approach is required. You will have to show that you have kept this in mind while planning your objectives, while planning your strategy, while designing your search strings, and finally included in the discussions and conclusions of your report.
Thank you. All right, and then I think we can do one more quick one. I'm going to combine a couple questions. This is around, do you need to subscribe to the search databases or does CAPTUS automatically include that? And then if someone has purchased a journal article, can that be used in the system?
Parvati, do you want to take this one?
Sure, yeah. So regarding the subscription, CAPTUS is already integrated with PubMed and Google Scholar. And if you have a subscription to other databases such as Embase or Cochrane, you can export export the data and import it onto CAPTUS. CAPTUS also has the feature of import template option, wherein you can load the articles with their DOI, and you can import it onto CAPTUS, which will get the articles onto the platform. So I think that answers both the questions.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And we are at time. Kasturi Parvarthy, thank you so much for the wonderful information, and our audience, thank you for the terrific questions. We appreciate those, and look forward to doing this again soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.